So OpenAI, Sam Altman, and a lot of other industry leaders are gonna have like a closed door discussion with the government on PhD level super agents. Bear in mind that these agents are not out yet; they're still in development. They just want to do a briefing of what these agents can do to the government.
Yeah, I think in terms of PhD level problems, the one thing that OpenAI is doing quite aggressively, the head of, the vice president of engineering in OpenAI did a podcast such as this with Terence Tao of UCLA, who's probably considered one of the top mathematicians in the world. And Terence essentially laid out a roadmap in terms of machine generated proofs. If you have to prove some result, can we essentially come up with new mechanisms wherein a part of the proof is done by some algorithm and then human beings can navigate that algorithm and work with it to eventually generate a proof. Whether it's possible, whether it is going to have a significant impact or not, that's more to be seen. I read an anecdote from the Indian Institute of Science. There's a professor by the name Y. Narahari who retired last year, who's a game theorist, who's written a couple of books on game theory, who's like a pioneer in that field. And he essentially said, like he's been teaching in ISC since 1980s, and his entire curriculum had a huge revamp as a result of utilization of AI as part of the curriculum, meaning like how to prepare notes, how to generate, let's say, notes for the class, and give it as an addendum to students. So these kinds of innovations will happen. Whether it can actually solve PhD level problems, that goes to be, it's not that clear. I heard a claim that was made on Y Combinator's video, wherein, oh, physics prize was given to Geoffrey Hinton uh, for his work on neural networks in the 1980s, and chemistry prize was given to Hasabi, John Jumper, and David Baker's lab. So they're saying like AI essentially transformer models, not the entire field of AI. Transformer models specifically have won these two awards. So she went on to make a claim that probably AI is going to take over all of sciences, which might be possible. Biology, there might be some problems that AI can help facilitate, but it's not that obvious. It doesn't mean that there's no research. It just means that there's a new tool, and people, sciences of all kind, will use these new tools to essentially solve problems. It's like computer aided. It's like people figured out how to do simulations on a computer for the very first time. Obviously, it's going to augment lots of activities that people already do, but there will always be researchers doing great work. Any thoughts you guys want to share on this?
Oh, I
So
feel
I
it's
think
absolutely great that, the thought of artificial general intelligence is coming to, let's say, at least coming closer to life. It's something quite interesting. We have been waiting for this along with flying cars for a very long time, let's say. But again, it depends upon, how we train the models that these AGIs are built on, these advanced super agents are built on. We could have conversations that make it easy to interact with them rather than just having a typing input, or rather than having just a single way of interacting with these systems. It's good to have a more human like natural interaction, because end of the day, language and communication has to be natural. That's a great progress with AI. But I believe how they train the systems and how they fix the bias and how they make sure that the way they train these models to be fair to every query that comes in. And it's something that I guess we will see based upon over the long run, whether it is useful to us or is just extra gimmick and something that is just fun to try out but not that useful. Because end of the day, it's researchers and people who have spent a lot of time in a subject that can have thoughts and feelings that could help to build upon complex topics rather than just have machines help us with those ideas. So, hoping for the
Yeah, I
best, I
think.
guess. But
Yeah, sure. So I think in all research problems, the fundamentals of science doesn't change. I mean, ideally, you have to come up with a question, and I think science is as much about coming up with new questions as opposed to just merely answering the ones that are already there. Answering the questions is just as important, but coming up with questions is as important. So whenever I think I had this anecdote. I heard this anecdote from one of the physicists who said like a student usually comes up to me and says, "What kind of research problems are you working on?" And the students sort of expect that the senior researcher would give them a bunch of problems to solve, which might be a case with some of the researchers, but the researcher had a retort on that question saying that if I had a research problem, I would have solved it, I would have published it. So what's the point of discussing? So the idea being the point of finding a new research problem is part of research, right? If the problem is already known, and this assumes the fact that if you already know the problem, you can probably solve all the problems, which need not be the case. So so finding up with the summary being you have to come up with new research questions and then solve them using the tools that are available. So that's a long pending discussion. But going back to Sam's actual tweet that they're not building AGI yet, they haven't even had a design. So this speculation, which usually happens on any new technology, that AGI is sort of due next year or next month is sort of overblown, which is the point. I mean, so he's saying basically cut your expectations. They're not building anything right now. There are some abilities that these transformer models are good at, but we don't know the limits of it and how far it can go and things of that nature. And I don't have anything intelligent to say on it either.
I think since the beginning of like December, there's a lot of traction for this agentic AI. I think in the earlier sessions we discussed about how you can like talk to Chat GPT now. You can just call up Chat GPT or like you can have like a virtual conversation with it on the app. So I think a lot of traction goes to this AGI this year. I think AGIs are like sooner than later AGI is gonna replace menial jobs. Like if you're in a customer service, something like that.
I think it's more of a convenience than anything, but still, you might not dismiss it as mere convenience, right? All of human knowledge is essentially retrieval of knowledge from some database. So you think of some concept and you want to just write it down. You're essentially querying a bunch of databases, which this tool does efficiently. So if you're looking at a machine learning paper and you've come up with a term and you just take a picture of, let's say, the equation or the term, post it on ChatGPT, it'll actually tell you and explain to you in great amount of detail as to what this, let's say, the equation ought to represent in the broader theory and what's its application is. That kind of connection between, let's say, taking one concept from just an image to the entire, connecting it to the entire framework, defining each terms. That is a huge upgradation in terms of how we educate people. So I think the biggest impact it'll have, and probably it'll have impact on lots of different things, but the biggest impact I see it having will be in the field of education, where people educate themselves on various topics.